as well. Okay, so I've just started the recording. So I think it's best if I ask the questions from you, because this is stuff that you already have done. And I've been standing here, I'm sure that you guys know most of what I'm going to cover over here. So what are the two different types of classes that we can use? How do you differentiate between the two classes? How do we differentiate between the two classes? Okay, in any case, so I'm going to move on. So there's two classes. One is one class that we can instantiate, and then one is one that we cannot instantiate. So the one that I'm going to show you in the following slide what instantiation means. So a class normally has attributes and it has methods or data components, and I'm going to show you what that is. But an example is, so over here we've got a student class. So the attributes or object attributes, it's the surname, the name, which means that these are the properties of a class that you can assign data to. And then the data components are the methods. So the attributes hold the contents of the class, which means that the data that is being communicated. And then the instant methods are the procedures. What should the class do? Okay. And then, so when you're creating a class, you can have a number of access modifiers. One is public, one is protected, one is internal, and one is private. So if it's public, it means that the class can be viewed anywhere in the class. And if it's protected, it means that only the child classes have access. And if it's private, it means that no class has access to properties inside that class. So when you're creating a class, this is how you normally create a class. So if here we've got a student class, you use the keyword class, and then you give your class a name. So here we've got a student class, and then you use the parentheses to show that everything that belongs to this class goes between the two curly brackets. So when you're creating properties for your class, so over here I've got an ID number that is private, which means that it can only be accessed inside this class. And then we also have stuff that we call composition, which defines a relationship between two classes. But we're going to look at this when we are, yes, I'm recording the class. So we're going to look at this when we're doing inheritance. And then we've got a method. So our method over here, we can create a method inside a class. So now we have a data property and we have a method that we can create inside a class. And then we can also have reference type to our classes. So when we're creating a class, the reference type is the word or the name that you give to your class that you're going to use to access methods and properties inside that class. So an example of a reference type over here is student. So the name of your class is student, but a reference to the student class is this student that is written in black. So when you call student, therefore you are able to access the method that is called welcome message, which is in the student class. So that's the reference. And so when you click that button, you can change the text of the label to whatever that was in the welcome message. And then you can also pass classes to methods the same way that you pass data. So over here we've got a method that is a method in your class now, in your form class. So this method returns a string, And so this method accepts a string data and a student, and then it returns this data. And then we can have properties. Now here, what happens is that our ID number is private and it cannot be accessed outside this class unless it's public. So we create a property that is going to get this ID number that is private, and we want to make it public. And then when we return it, since we do not know the value, so we assign the value to an empty value that we are going to assign in the form class. Okay, and I'm going to show you. So over here, this is where we now assign ID number to the value. And look at the ID number that we're using is the one with the capital letter, whereas over here, we have the ID number with the small letter. So that is the one that we do not have access to. We only have access to this one in a capital letter. And then when we look at this one, we assign the value, because over here, we said set this to value. And value in this case is the ID number that we provide. Okay. So we can also have auto-implemented properties. Auto-implemented properties are ones that in the beginning, when you set them, they're just public and they just do get and set. So automatically, these are going to be accessed outside. You do not need to make private and then go back to public. And they're normally created by making them capital letter, and then so when you're creating an auto-implemented property, you declare them as a method. Okay. So far, this is how far we've gone. And then you also have a constant. So a constant is a value that never changes in your class. So when you create it using the const keyword. So for an example here, our constant is that this is a student in the Nelson Mandela University, which is a constant. So all students are students at the Nelson Mandela University. Okay. So are there any questions? Okay, so there are no questions. So there's now using this reference. If you want to refer to a content or method or property in a class, you use this reference to refer to methods of a class. So sometimes you might be using methods in a class that you might not see. So once you use this reference, this refers to a method in this class or property in this class. So this dot fees refers to this fees with the capital letter. Okay. So you can see that, for an example, when you want to hide a form, you just go this dot hide, even though there's no hide method, but you know that that form has a hide method. So far, this is what we can show using the information that we have. Okay. And then we have what we call a constructor. So a constructor is a method like which normally allows us to create an instance of a class. So if you want to use your class, you need to have a constructor. But by default in C#, you're provided with a default constructor where it's automatically supplied without parameters. But you can overload your constructors by adding more constructors, okay? But now with different parameters. If you have a constructor with the same parameters, then your code is going to crash because your parameters need to be different from each other. Okay, So you're going to now look at the code in our next class. But what you should do is you should also go and listen to the recordings that are on the Learn side that are going to assist you to grasp the content, so that when we look at the code, you can easily prepare your questions. Are you guys still there? Do you understand? Okay. So please go and look at the slides on the Learn site. I'm not sure if I've created a video for that or it's just slides. But I'm sure that they do have a voiceover that you guys can listen to. I'll also share this recording. And then maybe we're going to have our second class on Monday, where we're going to discuss in more detail classes, which is going to be the last part in classes. Therefore, we're going to go into inheritance. Okay. So I think if you don't have questions, we can maybe end the session and then meet again on Monday. Okay, cheers. We're going to meet again on Monday.